The white cop dragged the girl to court in chains, unaware she was a legal prodigy. Hit a like button and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you are watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The sun was just beginning to set over the quiet suburban neighborhood, casting a warm, golden glow on the streets of Maplewood. The kind of small town where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were rare, and where peace was taken for granted. But that peace was about to be shattered. Inside Donovan's deli, the faint hum of the refrigerator was drowned out by the loud arguments echoing from the counter. Emily Adams, a 15-year-old girl with sharp eyes and a quick mind, stood by the door, watching as a confrontation unfolded between Officer Smith and Mr. Harris, the store owner. Mr. Harris was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, known for his gentle demeanor and his impeccable service. He was beloved by the neighborhood for his kindness, always offering discounts to those in need. But today, something was different. The mood was tense. "I told you, officer, I have all my receipts and inventory logs," Mr. Harris said, his voice shaking with frustration. "I don't know where this accusation is coming from. There's no stolen merchandise here." But Officer Smith, a burly, middle-aged cop with a reputation for being heavy-handed, wasn't listening. He stood tall behind the counter, his hand resting on his belt, where his weapon was clearly visible. The other officers in the store were watching, silent but imposing. "Look, Mr. Harris," Officer Smith snapped. "We've had multiple reports about stolen goods in this area, and your shop is flagged as a potential source. You don't have the right to argue with me." His tone was cold, dismissive. Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Actually, Officer Smith," she interjected, "you do not have the right to search Mr. Harris's store without a warrant. This is an unlawful search, and you're violating his rights." Officer Smith turned, eyebrows raised in surprise. A young girl, no older than 15, was challenging him. It wasn't something he was used to, but he wasn't about to let some teenager speak out against him in front of his colleagues. "Excuse me?" Officer Smith said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You think you know the law?" "I do," Emily replied confidently, stepping closer. "I know that under the Fourth Amendment, Mr. Harris is entitled to be secure in his property against unreasonable searches, and unless you have a warrant or his consent, you're breaking the law." The officers around them shifted uncomfortably. Emily's calmness made them uneasy. She wasn't just some kid talking out of turn, she was speaking with an authority that felt unnatural for her age. "This is none of your business, little girl," Officer Smith said, his eyes narrowing. But Emily wasn't backing down. "Actually, it is. You're abusing your power. This is harassment. If you continue, I'll make sure you're held accountable. I'll contact the local ACLU and file a formal complaint." Mr. Harris, still visibly shaken, watched as Emily stood tall, her words cutting through the tension in the room. For a moment, he felt a sense of hope. She wasn't afraid. But Officer Smith wasn't impressed. "You're obstructing justice," Officer Smith growled, his face reddening. "I'm arresting you for interfering with an official investigation." "What?" Emily asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "That's not even a charge. I'm simply standing up for what's right." Without warning, Officer Smith reached for her arm and yanked it behind her back, slapping cuffs on her wrists with a brutal twist. "You're coming with me," he snarled, as Emily winced in pain. Mr. Harris stepped forward, but the officers quickly intervened, blocking his path. "No, this isn't right," he shouted, but his words fell on deaf ears as Emily was dragged out of the deli. As they marched down the street, Emily's mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had hoped her knowledge of the law would make a difference, but instead, She found herself in handcuffs, an innocent teenager, arrested for standing up for what was right. The courtroom was filled with the usual hum of anticipation. Papers shuffled, people whispered, and the sound of heels clicking on the hard floor echoed throughout. But for Emily, this wasn't an ordinary day. Today, she was about to face the consequences of trying to do the right thing. Emily sat nervously in the holding cell, waiting for her case to be called. Officer Smith had made it clear that he didn't believe she was a threat, but he was making an example of her. He had charged her with obstruction of justice, a ridiculous accusation for someone who was simply standing up for a store owner's rights. She glanced at the clock on the wall, her thoughts swirling. Why is it that when people stand up for others, they are punished instead of applauded? Her thoughts were interrupted as the door opened. A courtroom officer stepped in, his uniform crisp and clean. "Emily Adams," he called. Her heart skipped a beat as she stood and walked toward the door. She wasn't going to back down. This was her moment. The moment she would prove to every unluding Officer Smith that she was more than just a naive teenager. As she entered the courtroom, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. She could feel the eyes of everyone on her, some curious, others judgmental. She noticed Judge Parker sitting at the bench, an older man with a stern expression, and the prosecutor, a middle-aged woman with a tight-lipped smile. Emily's gaze shifted to Officer Smith, who stood by the prosecutor's side, looking smug. The bailiff called the case. State versus Emily Adams, obstruction of justice. The room fell silent as Emily stood tall. She could hear her heart pounding, but she wasn't afraid. She was determined. This was her time to speak up, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been wronged by the system. The courtroom fell into a hush as Emily stood at the defendant's table, hands clasped tightly in front of her. She wore a simple dress, one her foster mother had picked out that morning with trembling hands. No lawyer stood beside her. She had refused the court-appointed one. Emily stood quietly, her arms crossed. She didn't smile. Not yet. She'd won, but not for herself. Mr. Harris's case was still pending. Others like her still suffered. A woman in a grey pantsuit approached. She had a calm confidence and a firm handshake. "I'm Teresa Lang, civil rights attorney. I saw everything," she said. "We need to talk. You have something rare, Emily, and I want to help you use it." Emily blinked. "Use it how?" "To take on the system and win." Judge Parker adjusted his glasses, peering at the case file with a tired expression. "Miss Adams, I see you've waived your right to legal counsel. Is that correct?" Emily nodded calmly. "Yes, Your Honor. I will represent myself." A quiet chuckle rolled through the room, mostly from the prosecution table. Officer Smith smirked, shaking his head slightly. Judge Parker raised an eyebrow. "And you understand the risks involved?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replied. "But I believe the truth is on my side." That sentence shifted something in the room. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to proceed quickly. The state has evidence of verbal interference during an active investigation, documented by police body cam footage and 2 officer testimonies. The defendant disrupted an investigation involving a possible theft ring. She insulted and threatened a police officer in public." Emily stepped forward. "Your Honor, may I respond?" "You may," Judge Parker said, curious now. Emily opened her notebook, flipping quickly to a marked page. Under Terry v. Ohio, 392 U.S. 1, 1968, and Map v. Ohio, 367 U.S. 643, 1961. Officer Smith had no legal grounds to conduct a search without a warrant, probable cause, or consent from Mr. Harris. I simply stated these facts. That is not obstruction. That is free speech protected under the First Amendment. A sharp whisper cut through the court gallery. The prosecutor looked stunned. How do you know those cases? Emily looked up, unflinching. I study the law. I've been reading law books since I was 10. My foster home doesn't offer much, but the library does. Judge Parker leaned back, more alert now. Do you have any evidence supporting your claim that you did not obstruct? I do. Emily took a breath. Your Honor, I respectfully request the body cam footage be played in full, not just the 30 seconds clipped for this case. The full version will show I never physically interfered. I only spoke up to prevent an unlawful act. The judge glanced at the prosecutor. Is that footage available? The prosecutor hesitated, then signaled the tech clerk. Minutes later, the screen flickered to life. What followed was a clear recording of Emily standing calmly, stating her points without any aggression, while Officer Smith raised his voice, ignored questions, and eventually grabbed her roughly. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Judge Parker stared hard at the screen. Then he looked at Smith. This is not obstruction. This is a young citizen quoting the law. Officer Smith, why did you proceed with arresting her? Smith stiffened. She was getting in the way. Kids shouldn't lecture cops. Emily didn't flinch. That's not the law, sir. That's your pride. A heavy silence fell. Judge Parker leaned forward slowly. Miss Adams, you may be the most prepared, self-defending minor I've ever seen. Case dismissed. As the courtroom emptied, reporters swarmed. Cameras clicked. Words like child genius and legal prodigy were tossed around. The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters and spectators, but Emily barely noticed. Her mind was still reeling from what had just happened. She wasn't supposed to win it against a white cop, not in a system that never saw girls like her. Teresa Lang placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Let's get out of here, she said softly, guiding Emily through the crowd and into a black SUV waiting at the curb. Inside, the car was cool and quiet. For the first time that day, Emily exhaled. Who are you? She asked. I run a non-profit that fights wrongful arrests and racial bias, Teresa replied. I also used to be a federal prosecutor. I saw the case notice and something about it didn't sit right, so I came to watch. Emily looked down. And now? Now, I want to mentor you. Emily's head jerked up. Mentor me? Yes, Teresa said. I've seen Harvard Law graduates crumble under pressure, but you stood in front of a judge, alone, and won. That's not just intelligence, Emily, that's courage. Emily was quiet for a while. Why would you help me? Teresa leaned in. Because I was you once. A girl nobody believed in. But someone saw something in me and changed my life. Now it's my turn to pass that on. Emily's eyes welled with silent tears. What would I have to do? Come with me. Stay at my home for now. We'll figure out the legal side: foster care, emancipation, but the goal is clear. Train you, protect you, and help you prepare. Prepare for what? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. To shake the system from the inside. Teresa's house was nothing like Emily had ever seen. It was warm, full of books, quiet strength, and history. Not fancy, just solid. Like a place built on dreams that had once seemed impossible. That night, Emily sat on the guest bed, staring at the shelves lined with legal books, court transcripts, and framed photos of Teresa at protests, in courtrooms, and with clients. The door opened gently. Teresa peeked in. Can't sleep? Emily nodded. Teresa walked over and sat beside her. Your case, it's going viral. People are calling you the girl who outlawed the badge. Emily winced. That's not what I wanted. But it's what you sparked, Teresa said. You have a choice, Emily. Let it be a moment, or turn it into a movement. Emily looked at her, eyes firm. Then teach me everything. 3 days after Emily moved into Teresa's home, she was already deep into legal research. She woke up before sunrise, poring over constitutional law and landmark cases. Teresa watched her with quiet admiration and a touch of concern. This had fire, but she was still healing. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, Teresa walked into the study with a file in hand. Want to see how the law really works? She asked. Emily looked up eagerly. Yes. Teresa handed her the file. This is Ava Thompson, 15 years old, arrested for shoplifting. The store owner says she stole makeup and candy. Cops say she resisted, but... Emily flipped through the pages quickly. No lawyer, no parent present during questioning, no security footage attached. Teresa nodded. Exactly. And guess who's prosecuting? Emily didn't have to ask. The same DA from my case. Yes. Emily sat back. What do we do? We meet Ava. They drove to the juvenile detention center. Emily's stomach twisted as the gates opened. She knew this place too well. It looked just like the one she'd once sat in herself. Ava was small, thin, with braids that looked like they hadn't been touched in days. Her eyes were guarded. I didn't steal nothing, she whispered through the glass. I was just holding it for my cousin while she went to the bathroom. But the manager said I looked suspicious. Emily's voice was soft but steady. Did the police read you your rights? Ava shook her head. Did they call your mom? Number. They said, if I told them the truth, they'd let me go. Emily turned to Teresa. This is coercion. And no Miranda rights? This case is already falling apart. Teresa smiled slightly. Good. So what's your plan? Emily breathed deep, thinking quickly. We don't fight the store yet. We go after the arrest, file a motion to suppress the confession, then get the store's cameras subpoenaed. Exactly, Teresa said. And this time you'll do the talking in court. Emily blinked. Me? You're not just learning the law anymore, Teresa said gently. You're using it. Emily stood before the judge, defending Ava. This wasn't her own fight anymore. It was someone else's life in her hands. She argued with passion and clarity, dismantling the prosecution piece by piece. The confession was tossed, charges dropped. Ava was free. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Who is this girl? Reporters rushed toward her outside the courthouse. Questions flew. Cameras flashed. And then it happened. A familiar voice echoed from the crowd. Officer Raymond Crowley, the same white cop who dragged Emily in chains. Looks like you've been busy, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Emily stood tall. I've only just started. Days later, Teresa's home was broken into. No items were taken, just legal files scattered and Emily's court notes missing. It was a message. Soon, a lawsuit was filed against Emily. They claimed she practiced law without a license. The DA re-emerged. Crowley filed a countercase, claiming Emily defamed him in public. They wanted to destroy her. Teresa gave her a choice: lie low or fight back. Emily didn't flinch. We go to war in court. Emily's case made national headlines. Crowley's history unraveled records, showed abuse complaints buried for years. A hidden whistleblower stepped forward, giving Emily the final evidence she needed. In court, she stood not as a lawyer, but as her own advocate, again. "Your Honor," she said, voice strong, "I was dragged here in chains for a crime I didn't commit. Now they're doing it again, but this time I'm ready." She exposed the lies. The judge listened. And when the gavel fell, Emily won. The city apologized. Crowley was suspended. The DA resigned. Emily was offered a full scholarship by the top law school in the country, but she said no for now. Instead, she opened the Justice by Emily Initiative, helping kids like Ava find their voice in courtrooms. She stood taller, not because people feared her, but because they believed in her. Years later, the courtroom was quiet as a young attorney entered, briefcase in hand. The clerk announced, "Now presenting, Attorney Emily." Everyone stood. She smiled, remembering the day they made her walk in chained. Not anymore. Now they stood for her. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away just yet. Drop a comment below. We want to hear your story. And if you believe that no one should be judged by the color of their skin, their job, or how they look, hit that like button and smash subscribe button for more powerful true life stories.